She was just cleaning the floor, at a luxury party she could never afford to attend. While guests danced and laughed under golden lights, she was invisible, just another worker in the shadows. But what happens when a billionaire mistakes her for one of them? One cruel misunderstanding will destroy her dignity and change both of their lives forever. This is the story of a janitor who taught a millionaire the true meaning of respect. The ballroom shimmered under 1,000 golden lights. Guests in tuxedos and designer gowns moved like constellations across the marble floor. Waiters passed silver trays of champagne, and laughter echoed like music. Hidden in the corner, Rachel Miller knelt, scrubbing away a spill before anyone noticed. Her hands ached, but her focus never wavered. She glanced briefly at the mirrored walls, where her reflection blended into the shadows. No one saw her, no one cared, and that was fine. She wasn't there to be seen, she was there to work. The job paid for her college classes and her mother's medication. In a city like New York, survival meant humility and hard work, not pride. But that night, something shifted. Across the room, Ethan Carter, tech billionaire and guest of honor, noticed her. At first, he thought she was a guest who had dropped something. Her grace, the way she carried herself even in a janitor's uniform, didn't fit the background. He smiled faintly. Curiosity piqued, and made a mental note to approach her. Rachel, unaware of his gaze, stood to wipe the last streak of champagne from the floor. The music swelled as she pushed her cleaning cart toward the service door. A waiter bumped into her, spilling wine again, and she sighed softly. Her uniform clung to her wrists, soaked and cold. Still, she managed a polite smile. "It's fine," she said, though it wasn't. Ethan approached, holding his glass of scotch. "How you handle chaos better than most CEOs," he joked lightly. Rachel blinked, unsure whether to laugh or walk away. "Just doing my job," she replied evenly, returning to her cart. He chuckled. "You say that like you run the place." His tone was teasing, but his eyes carried a spark of interest. Before Rachel could respond, another guest called out Ethan's name. He turned briefly, and by the time he looked back, she had vanished into the hallway. Something about her calm, her quiet dignity unsettled him. He wasn't used to being ignored, especially not by someone who looked at him without fear or flattery. In the kitchen, Rachel exhaled in relief. Encounters like that could cost her job if taken the wrong way. "Keep your head down, girl," her supervisor always said. "Invisible people stay employed." She tied her apron tighter and grabbed another mop. The night wasn't over yet, and dreams didn't pay rent. Meanwhile, Ethan lingered near the bar, scanning the room for her. "Who was that woman?" he asked a colleague. "The one in blue." The man laughed. "Blue uniform? Probably housekeeping, Ethan." The laughter stung more than he expected. He shrugged it off, but her image stayed with him, those eyes full of quiet fire. Outside, snow began to fall over Manhattan, coating the city in silver. Rachel waited for the bus, breath visible in the cold air. Her phone buzzed a message from her mother. "Did you eat, sweetheart?" She smiled softly. "Not yet, Mom, soon." She didn't know it yet, but that night had just changed everything. And in a penthouse 30 stories above, Ethan poured another drink, staring out the window. "Just housekeeping," he muttered. Yet for the first time in years, he felt something stir, not desire, but curiosity, and a strange sense of guilt he couldn't name. If this first moment already touched your heart, imagine what comes next in Rachel and Ethan's journey. Subscribe now, and don't miss the rest of this story, one that proves even a single act of kindness can change everything. The next evening, the gala continued at a private after-party. Rachel had been asked to stay late cleaning up the ballroom before the second wave of guests arrived. She didn't complain. Overtime meant extra pay. But when she saw Ethan again, her heart sank. She prayed he wouldn't recognize her. Ethan, however, did recognize her, and this time, his curiosity had turned to arrogance. "Didn't expect to see you again," he said, leaning casually against a marble column. "Did you get invited twice?" His words sounded playful to him, but to Rachel they felt sharp. She straightened her back and replied, "I work here, sir." The tone was polite but distant. A few guests nearby overheard. Whispers spread like wildfire. Ethan, realizing his mistake, tried to laugh it off, but one of his colleagues smirked. "Carter, you're full of surprises. Mixing with the staff now?" The laughter that followed was cruel, and Rachel's chest tightened. Her cheeks burned, but she refused to cry. She picked up her cleaning supplies and walked away silently. The laughter died when she didn't react. Something about her calm exit made even Ethan uncomfortable. "That's enough," he muttered to his friend, but the damage was done. Rachel's supervisor approached moments later, frowning. "You caused a scene," he whispered harshly. "Go home. I'll call you tomorrow." She knew what that meant. She was fired. Outside, the snow had turned to slush. Rachel walked through it, her uniform soaked, eyes stinging with unshed tears. Her phone buzzed again, her mother checking in. Rachel forced a steady voice. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just tired." She didn't have the heart to tell her she'd lost another job. Back inside, Ethan's guilt began to fester. He replayed the scene again and again, realizing how cruel it had sounded. Sophie, his sister, found him later and crossed her arms. "You humiliated someone just trying to work," she said sharply. "Do you even hear yourself anymore?" He didn't answer. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter felt ashamed. Rachel returned home near midnight, exhausted and cold. Her mother, Margaret, waited awake on the couch. "You look pale," she said softly. Rachel forced a smile. "Just a long shift." She sat beside her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "One day," she whispered, "I'll be the one hosting the party, not cleaning it." Margaret smiled faintly. "And you will, sweetheart, because you have something they don't." Ethan couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rachel's quiet strength and the way she walked away without a word. He poured himself another drink, staring out over the city that had made him rich and hollow. For the first time, the skyline felt empty. For the first time, he wanted to change something, starting with himself. And far below that same skyline, in a small Brooklyn apartment, Rachel prayed for a new start. Neither knew it yet, but fate had already written their paths to cross again, not as strangers, but as two souls learning what real worth truly means. Ethan woke before dawn, the city still quiet beneath the fog. The events of the previous night haunted him like a stain he couldn't wash away. For years, he had built his empire on logic, control, and pride. But now, a single moment of arrogance had shaken it all. His sister, Sophie's words echoed in his mind. "You humiliated someone just trying to work." For once, he had no defense. He poured himself a black coffee and sat by the window, watching snow gather on the rooftops. His reflection in the glass looked foreign, the tailored suit, the expensive watch, the tired eyes. All of it suddenly seemed hollow. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a young woman he'd wronged was probably struggling to pay rent, while he drowned in guilt inside a penthouse. For the first time, his wealth felt meaningless. Meanwhile, Rachel sat at her kitchen table, flipping through job listings on her cracked phone screen. The agency had no openings at the moment, which meant she was out of luck again. Her mother, Margaret, sat nearby, sewing old clothes with trembling hands. "Don't worry, Mom," Rachel said softly. "Something will come." But her voice wavered. She didn't believe it herself. That night, Rachel pulled out her textbooks, trying to focus on her business management homework. The words blurred before her eyes, exhaustion making it hard to think. She remembered Ethan's face, confident, careless, powerful, the kind of man who never had to wonder how he'd pay for tomorrow. A mix of anger and sadness rose in her chest, but she pushed it down. "Keep moving," she whispered. "No one's coming to save you." In his apartment, Ethan opened his laptop and looked up the cleaning company that staffed the gala. It was an impulse, one that surprised even him. He didn't know what he wanted to apologize, to explain, or maybe just to ease the guilt that ate at him. But when he saw her name on the employee roster, something inside him shifted. "Rachel Miller," he murmured. "You deserve better than that." And for the first time, Ethan Carter decided to fix something money couldn't buy. 2 weeks later, Rachel received a call from another cleaning agency. "Carter Enterprises is looking for temporary staff," the woman said. "High pay, short contract." Rachel hesitated, but accepted she couldn't afford to be picky. She had no idea that Carter meant Ethan Carter. By Monday morning, she was standing in the skyscraper lobby, mop bucket in hand, heart steady but cautious. The office floors gleamed under fluorescent lights. Rachel moved quietly between desks, careful not to draw attention. Everything about the building screamed wealth, the smell of polished wood, the hum of computers, the whisper of expensive shoes on tile. She'd learned to make herself invisible, but as she entered the executive floor, her eyes froze on a familiar nameplate, Ethan Carter, CEO. Her stomach dropped. For a moment, she thought of running, but pride rooted her to the ground. She had done nothing wrong. If fate had decided to play this cruel trick, she would face it with her head high. She adjusted her gloves and stepped inside the office, broom in hand. Ethan looked up from his laptop, startled. For a moment, neither spoke. The air thickened between them like unspoken memory. "Rachel?" he said finally, standing too quickly. She met his gaze with calm defiance. "Mr. Carter," she replied, voice firm but even. "Just here to do my job." The words hit him harder than she knew. "You shouldn't be," he started, but she interrupted gently. "I need the work, sir. That's all." Ethan nodded, unable to find words that didn't sound hollow. The silence between them was heavier than any argument. As she turned to leave, Ethan spoke again, quieter this time. "I owe you an apology." Rachel paused at the door but didn't turn around. "You don't owe me anything," she said softly. "You just showed me what people with power really look like." Her words cut deeper than anger ever could. And when she left the room, Ethan realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't in control, she was. The next morning, Ethan waited in his office, pacing. He had drafted and deleted a dozen emails, unsure how to apologize without sounding condescending. Money couldn't fix what he'd broken her dignity. When Rachel entered to clean, he cleared his throat. "Rachel, please, I'd like to talk." She kept her eyes on the floor. "There's nothing to talk about, Mr. Carter," she replied calmly, mopping near the window. "I was wrong that night," he said, voice low but sincere. "I spoke without thinking, and You didn't speak without thinking," Rachel interrupted, finally meeting his gaze. "You spoke exactly what you think. That's worse." Her tone wasn't angry, it was honest. That honesty unsettled him more than any insult could. Ethan opened his mouth but couldn't find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. As she finished cleaning, Rachel added quietly, "Some people have to fight for respect every day, Mr. Carter. Others are born with it and waste it." She picked up her mop and turned away. Ethan watched her go, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt. The silence she left behind filled the entire room, echoing louder than any reprimand. Later that afternoon, Ethan called his sister Sophie. "You were right," he admitted. "I've become the kind of man I swore I'd never be." Sophie smiled sadly through the phone. "Then stop being him. Start fixing what you broke." He stared at his reflection in the glass wall, realizing for the first time that power without empathy meant nothing at all. Meanwhile, Rachel sat on the subway ride home, exhausted but proud. She had stood her ground without losing her grace. Still, her chest ached not from hate, but from disappointment. People like Ethan Carter ruled the world, and people like her cleaned up after them. Yet somewhere deep inside, she sensed this wouldn't be the last time their paths crossed. Something in his eyes had changed, something restless. By the end of the week, whispers began to spread through Carter Enterprises. Some said the CEO had taken an interest in the new cleaning girl. Others claimed Rachel was his pet project. Every time she walked into a room, conversations stopped. Every time Ethan passed by, curious glances followed. What had started as pity turned into scandalous speculation. Rachel ignored the gossip, focusing on her work. But every whisper felt like a small cut, invisible yet painful. One afternoon, while disinfecting the boardroom, she overheard two executives joking. "Carter must really like his floors spotless," one said with a laugh. "Or maybe he likes the person cleaning them." Rachel froze, then quietly left before they noticed her trembling hands. When Ethan heard about the rumors, his blood boiled. "Who started this?" he demanded during a meeting, but no one answered. Sophie pulled him aside afterward. "You can't protect her by reacting like this," she warned. "It'll only make things worse." Ethan leaned against the wall, frustrated. "But I caused this mess," he muttered, "and now she's paying for it." That evening, Rachel found a small envelope on her locker. No name, no note, just a single phrase typed inside. "People like you don't belong here." Her chest tightened, tears threatening to fall, but she swallowed them back. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. Instead, she folded the note and threw it away, her resolve turning to steel. The next morning she arrived early, head held high. Ethan saw her from his office window, calm, graceful, unbroken. For reasons he couldn't explain, that simple sight moved him more than any victory or deal ever had. The gossip might have turned the company cold, but in that quiet moment, Ethan Carter realized he'd found something priceless in the chaos: respect. Days passed, and the tension inside Carter Enterprises began to shift. Ethan started arriving earlier, walking the halls without his usual entourage, taking quiet notice of things he had long ignored. He noticed the janitors, the receptionists, the people who kept the company running but never got thanked. Rachel had opened his eyes not through anger, but through truth. For the first time, Ethan Carter began to listen. He implemented new staff policies, increasing wages for custodial and maintenance workers. When asked why, he said, "Because respect shouldn't depend on a paycheck." His board hated it, but Sophie smiled knowingly. She saw her brother changing, piece by piece, shedding his arrogance like an old skin. "You're becoming human again," she teased one morning. Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe I'm just late to the lesson." Meanwhile, Rachel noticed the changes, but stayed cautious. She didn't believe in coincidences, not in the world she lived in. Yet when she saw the new coffee machines in the janitor's lounge and heard about paid overtime for cleaners, she couldn't deny something was different. "Someone upstairs is listening," said her friend Daniel, another cleaner. Rachel smiled faintly. If that's true, then maybe there's hope. One afternoon, Ethan passed by Rachel in the corridor. Their eyes met briefly, no words, no tension, just a moment of quiet understanding. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. He watched her walk away, the determination in her step more powerful than any speech. "She's stronger than all of us," he thought, and I almost broke that. But the world wasn't done testing them. Jealous co-workers whispered louder now, sensing a story. The more Ethan tried to stay professional, the more the gossip grew. Rachel's pride told her to ignore it, but her heart warned her that peace never lasts long in a place built on appearances. She just didn't know yet Ethan's next decision would change everything. Late one evening, Ethan stood alone in his office, staring at Rachel's personnel file. He had already learned more about her than she'd ever wanted him to know: her age, her studies, her mother's illness. He didn't intend to invade her privacy, but something inside him couldn't let it go. "She deserves a chance," he whispered to himself. That night, he made a choice, one that would come from the right place, but lead to pain. He called Sophie. "I want to cover Rachel's tuition," he said, quietly, through the foundation. Sophie hesitated. "Ethan, she's proud. She'll hate feeling like a charity case." But he was resolute. "I'm not doing it for guilt," he replied. "I'm doing it because she's the kind of person this world needs at the top." Sophie sighed but agreed. The donation was processed anonymously by morning. Rachel's life changed subtly over the next few weeks. Her college emailed to say her remaining tuition balance had been cleared by an anonymous donor. Her cleaning schedule was adjusted to allow her to attend classes. The new opportunities felt like miracles, yet deep down, something unsettled her. "Good things don't happen to people like me for free," she told Daniel quietly. "Someone always wants something." Her suspicion turned into anger when she overheard two executives joking near the elevators. "Carter's getting generous these days," one said. "Maybe he's buying redemption." Rachel froze. Redemption. The word hit her like ice. That night, she connected the dots: the new benefits, the paid tuition, the improved conditions. It was him. Ethan Carter. He had done it all behind her back. The next morning, she stormed into his office, trembling with fury. Ethan looked up, startled. "Rachel, what's wrong?" She held out a letter, her tuition confirmation. "You had no right," she said, voice breaking. "You don't get to fix me with money." Ethan stood silently, guilt written all over his face. "I wasn't trying to fix you," he whispered. "I was trying to thank you." But the damage was done, and the distance between them had never felt greater. Rachel left the office without looking back, her footsteps echoing through the marble hallway. Every word Ethan had said spun in her mind like a storm she couldn't escape. He thought kindness was a transaction, and she refused to be anyone's redemption story. On the subway home, she clutched the tuition letter, anger burning behind her tears. "I don't need his pity," she whispered, though her heart ached at the thought of him. Ethan didn't chase her. He sat behind his desk staring at the closed door she had walked through. His plan, meant to make things right, had done the opposite. Sophie entered minutes later, reading the look on his face. "She found out," she said quietly. He nodded. "And now she'll never trust me again." His voice cracked, the kind of break that comes when pride finally gives up the fight. The next morning, Rachel returned her company ID and left without saying goodbye. As she exited the elevator, Ethan appeared in the lobby, breathless. "Please, Rachel, wait." She stopped, eyes red but steady. "You had your chance to see me, Mr. Carter," she said. "Now you can watch me walk away." It was the most painful sentence he had ever heard, and yet he respected it. Weeks passed. The building felt emptier without her. Ethan buried himself in work, attending board meetings, pretending to care about profits and expansion. But one afternoon, while reviewing the Carter Foundation's reports, he noticed a file, the top student from the scholarship program. Rachel Miller. The same program he'd once mocked in front of his team. His chest tightened with regret, so deep it hurt to breathe. That night, Ethan stood before a mirror, loosening his tie, his reflection a stranger. "You called it charity for dreamers," he muttered to himself, "and she was the dreamer." He realized then that Rachel had never needed saving. He had. Saving from his ego, from his loneliness, from the emptiness that money couldn't fill. And for the first time, Ethan Carter felt poor. Rumors had a way of finding oxygen. Within days, whispers about Ethan's relationship with a cleaning employee turned into headlines. "Billionaire CEO in secret affair with janitor." The story spread like wildfire, fueled by envy and speculation. Rachel woke up to hundreds of messages, some cruel, others pitying. She hadn't spoken to Ethan in weeks, yet somehow her name was tied to his downfall. At Carter Enterprises, chaos erupted. Investors demanded explanations. The PR team scrambled to contain the damage. And at the center of it all stood Jonathan Hale, Ethan's ambitious partner, the one who had leaked the story to destroy him. "I told you compassion makes you weak," Jonathan sneered during a meeting. Ethan didn't respond. His silence was his armor, but inside, he was burning. Rachel tried to stay quiet, but the online attacks grew vicious. Gold digger. Homewrecker. Fake saint. Every insult cut deeper than the last. When a reporter appeared outside her apartment, shouting questions, she broke down. "I have nothing to say," she cried before slamming the door. Margaret held her, trembling. "You did nothing wrong, my love," her mother whispered. The truth always survives the noise. Meanwhile, Ethan stood before a wall of flashing cameras. His legal team urged him to deny everything to protect the company, not the girl. But when a journalist asked, "Did you have a relationship with Rachel Miller?" Ethan's composure shattered. "No," he said, voice shaking. "But I should have had the courage to treat her like a human being when it mattered." The room went silent. His truth was both confession and collapse. By nightfall, the board had suspended him, the media had crucified him, and the city he once owned no longer respected his name. Yet somewhere inside that wreckage, Ethan felt lighter, stripped of lies, pretense, and fear. He had lost everything but the one thing he'd never truly known before: humility. And in that quiet ruin, he began to rebuild not his empire, but his soul. The days that followed were crueler than either of them imagined. Rachel couldn't leave her apartment without hearing whispers or seeing her face on a tabloid cover. At school, students avoided her. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment. Her professors encouraged her to lay low as if shame were contagious. Every door she'd worked so hard to open was closing again, one by one. Ethan's world crumbled in silence. His phone buzzed with investor calls, his name trended for all the wrong reasons, and Jonathan Hale was already preparing to take over the company. Sophie tried to reach him, but he barely spoke. "You can't hide forever," she said through the intercom. "You did the right thing." Ethan looked up from the floor, his voice hollow. "Then why does it feel like I lost everything?" That night, Rachel sat beside her mother, staring at the flickering TV screen. News anchors dissected every detail of her scandal. Margaret took her hand gently. "You can't let them define you," she said softly. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "But they already did, Mom. They turned my life into a headline." Margaret smiled sadly. "Then write your own story, sweetheart. Show them who you really are." Across the city, Ethan stood in front of the Carter Enterprises building for the last time. The sign, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a monument to everything he'd done wrong. He exhaled deeply and whispered to himself, "You built this on arrogance. Time to rebuild on truth." The security guards watched silently as he walked away. No entourage, no car, no applause. Just a man finally stripped of his armor. That night, he wrote a letter, short, honest, and raw. It began, "To Rachel Miller, I can't change what I've done, but I can show the world what I learned because of you." He didn't sign it as CEO or billionaire, just as Ethan. When he sealed the envelope, his hands trembled not with fear, but with clarity. Tomorrow he would face the world again, but this time as a man, not a title. The morning air was cold as cameras lined the steps of Carter Enterprises. Reporters shouted Ethan's name as he stepped up to the podium, dressed not in his usual tailored suit, but in a plain grey jacket. He looked tired but calm, the kind of calm that comes only after surrender. "I'm here today," he began, voice steady, "not to protect my reputation but to tell the truth." The murmurs died instantly. Ethan continued, "I hurt someone who worked for me, someone better than me in every way that matters. I disrespected her, tried to repair it with money, and when the world turned its eyes on her, I stayed silent. That silence was my greatest failure." Every word hit like a confession, raw and unpolished. It wasn't strategy, it was repentance. At home, Rachel watched the broadcast, frozen. Her name wasn't mentioned, but she knew who he meant. The sincerity in his eyes broke through her anger. Her mother smiled faintly beside her. "Looks like someone finally learned how to speak from the heart." Rachel blinked back tears. "He's still paying for what I paid first," she whispered, "but maybe now we're even." The press conference continued. "If integrity costs me my position, then I'll pay it," Ethan declared. "Because leadership isn't about winning, it's about owning your mistakes. I resign as CEO of Carter Enterprises, effective immediately." The crowd erupted. Flashes blinded him, but he smiled faintly. It wasn't relief. Exactly, it was release. When the cameras stopped rolling, Ethan stepped off the stage, ignoring the reporters calling his name. Sophie hugged him tightly. "You did it," she said. "You lost everything, and somehow you won yourself back." Ethan looked at her, eyes tired but clear. "Now," he said quietly, "it's time to start again the right way." And somewhere across the city, Rachel closed her laptop, tears in her eyes, whispering a single word into the quiet of her kitchen. Finally. The world moved on quickly, but Rachel didn't. Though Ethan's public confession had shifted the narrative, the damage lingered. The online noise faded, yet silence carried its own weight. She focused on finishing her last semester, taking part-time jobs where no one recognized her name. Her heart, though steady, carried an ache that no success could quiet. Ethan vanished from the spotlight entirely. His penthouse was sold, his name removed from the Carter Enterprises board, and his social media deleted. It was as if he'd never existed. Sophie, the only one who knew his whereabouts, protected his peace. "He's doing something different now," she told reporters, "something that actually matters." But she never said what that was or where he had gone. Months passed, seasons changed. Rachel's life slowly began to rebuild. She graduated quietly without fanfare or guests, holding her diploma like a promise to her mother. Margaret's health had declined, but her spirit hadn't. "You did it," she whispered proudly. "You kept your name clean." Rachel smiled faintly. "Clean is all I ever wanted, Mom. Clean and true." One chilly morning, Rachel received a letter in an unmarked envelope. The handwriting was familiar, firm, deliberate. "Dear Rachel, I owe my new beginning to the person who taught me what humility means. If you're willing, I'd like to show you what became of it." No signature, no address, only a location, an old warehouse in Queens. Her hands trembled as she folded the letter. She didn't know if she was ready to see him again. But the next day she went. Not because she forgave him completely, but because part of her heart needed to know if he'd truly changed. When she stepped into the taxi, snow began to fall softly over the city, just like the night they met. "Maybe this time," she whispered to herself, "it won't end in tears." She didn't know she was driving straight toward the next chapter of her life. The warehouse in Queens looked ordinary from the outside: rusted metal doors, cracked windows, graffiti scrawled across the walls. But inside, light spilled through newly restored skylights, illuminating rows of desks, laptops, and smiling faces. A sign hung above the entrance: the New Rise Foundation. Rachel froze, reading the tagline below it. "Opportunity begins with respect." A familiar voice broke the silence. "It's not fancy," Ethan said from behind her, "but it's real." Rachel turned slowly. He looked different, beard trimmed short, sleeves rolled up, no expensive watch, no arrogance in his eyes, just calm, human. "You did this?" she asked, her voice a whisper. Ethan nodded. "With a little help from Sophie, and from you." He led her through the space, explaining how the foundation helped low-income workers start small businesses. "I wanted to build something that gives people the kind of chance you should have had," he said softly. Rachel listened quietly, her heart torn between admiration and memory. "You didn't have to do this," she finally said. Ethan smiled faintly. "I didn't do it to make things right. I did it because you were right." They stopped beside a wall covered in photos, people smiling, signing papers, opening small shops. In the center hung a plaque that read, "In honor of those who work unseen." Rachel traced the words with her fingertips, her eyes glistening. "You finally understand," she said. Ethan met her gaze, his voice barely a whisper. "No, Rachel. You helped me remember." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, with a shaky breath, Rachel smiled, small but real. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Ethan laughed softly. "Whatever we build next, we build it together." And for the first time since the night they met, there were no walls between them, only light, forgiveness, and the fragile beginning of something beautiful. 5 years later, the world knew their names again, but this time, not for scandal. The New Rise Foundation had grown into a national movement, with offices across the country and thousands of lives transformed. Rachel stood on stage at a gala, her own gala, dressed in a simple navy gown, her posture calm, her eyes bright. Ethan stood beside her, no longer a man haunted by guilt, but one driven by purpose. Together, they had rewritten their story. As cameras flashed, Rachel took the microphone. 5 years ago, she began, I was cleaning floors in rooms like this one. I thought dignity was something you had to earn by being perfect, but I learned that dignity is something no one can take from you unless you give it away. The crowd fell silent, her words cutting through the noise like truth itself. Ethan's gaze softened with pride. He had built empires before, but nothing like this, something rooted in love and respect. After the speech, journalists approached them, eager for quotes about their fairy tale ending. Rachel smiled gently and shook her head. "It wasn't a fairy tale," she said. "It was a lesson that kindness is the only currency that never loses value." The line would echo in newspapers and documentaries for years, but to Rachel, it was simply the truth. Money could build walls, kindness could tear them down. Later that night, after the gala ended, Rachel and Ethan walked along the Hudson River, hand in hand. The city lights shimmered across the water like scattered diamonds. "You ever think about that night?" he asked softly. Rachel laughed. "Every day. The night you thought I was a VIP guest." He smiled. "Turns out I was right, you just didn't know it yet." They both laughed, their reflections mingling on the dark water below. As the wind carried the faint sounds of the city around them, Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. "We're not the same people we were," she said. Ethan nodded. "No, we're better." Behind them, the skyline glowed not as a monument to wealth, but as a symbol of renewal. And as they walked toward their future, one truth lingered like a promise in the cold night air. The richest hearts are the ones that know how to give. In the end, it wasn't money that changed their lives. It was kindness, humility, and the courage to see beyond appearances. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what did you learn from Rachel and Ethan's journey? Leave a like if you believe that love and respect are worth more than fortune. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters.